And
All righty, I see people coming in. As you're coming in, if you don't mind, if you could just let us know where you're coming from. We always like to see who's staying up really late or staying up very late or very early. I think the farthest we've gotten, right, Dean, was what, Dubai? I think that was the farthest we've had so far.
it's been pretty far, yeah, all over the world, it seems
All
like.
over. Fort Worth. Like it. Thanks, Chris. Chicago. Dean and I are in Southern California, so it's beautiful weather. Sorry for our East Coast friends. Houston, Newton, PA. Where else? Indianapolis. Thanks for coming on. Where else are you guys coming from? If you can just put in the chat where you're from, we always like to see who's here, and then we'll get kicked off here in a minute. Anyone from really far? Kansas City, Salt Lake, Woodbridge, VA, DC, near DC. Gotcha. St. Louis, Denver. Okay, a lot of US today. Florida, that might be the farthest we've got from us right now. Let's see.
San Clemente,
San
local.
Clemente, local, OC. This heat wave we're having this week. Boston, Vancouver. Okay. We're quote unquote international now with Vancouver. Um, good. I see people coming in. Perfect. So thank you guys so much for coming. We'll kind of get kicked off. It's 12:01. As you know, we always like to have give as much value as possible. This is a special one because we're going to be doing this in connection with Celigo, our partners. So it's going to be the autonomous finance function, practical AI frameworks for CFOs. Um, we'll go through our panel, but thank you so much as always. We do this once a month. If this is the first time you've been with us, we do this once a month. We've been doing it about 15, 16 months. Scale North, we literally just bring value to the NetSuite ecosystem. So I'll hand it to my buddy Dean, and he'll go over our agenda.
Yep. Thanks, Charles. Thanks for everybody who's joined and those who are still coming in and joining. Our agenda or goal for today, right, is we'll do some quick introductions. Charles will help us out with introductions to the Scale North and Celigo team. Then we'll do an overview on AI and automation, look at some of the strategy and pitfalls and things of that nature. And then we have from Celigo, that's both Ronan, Vengosh, and Thomas. Thomas is going to actually run through actual use cases that he's using at Celigo and to automate and transform their accounting and finance department. So that should be a really fun and interesting conversation. And then at the end, we're going to actually demonstrate some automations that we've done with AI, Celigo, NetSuite, various endpoints, just to kind of give a flavor and feel for things. So you have a pretty good, holistic picture of different aspects of AI and where things are at. And then we'd like to open it up to this group for a Q&A and takeaway forum. And then we can look at next steps, and we got some additional information that we can cover too. But that's really our goal, as Charles said, is to help enable and share the insights that we're seeing in the space and help people get the max out of their investment in AI and automation. Um, so with that being said, Charles, I'll hand it back to you to do the quick introduction so we can get into it.
For sure, for sure. Good stuff. So Q&A, and also if you guys have questions, please don't put it in the chat. There should be a Q&A box. It's a little box with a question mark in it. If you can use that so we can track the Q&A, that'd be greatly appreciated. Otherwise, it gets convoluted in there. So anyways, I'll go very quickly with me. Charles Stevenson, the sales team, managed two large sales teams for Fortune 500 companies in the past. I'm a Trojan, fight on. Really, the people you want to learn about is Mr. Dean. He is actually, he's in our sales team, but before this, he was actually 15 years of experience using NetSuite on the public and private side, 9 years of NetSuite experience as a user first, but more importantly, he's been 7 years here with ScaleNorth, did some of the most complex implementations the company has done and done over 20 implementations himself. If you've been on here, he gives value literally every week. He puts a lot of time and effort into these, so much appreciated. Now we'll do an
Oh,
intro for our Celigo friends here. So we've got Ronan. He's executive leadership, obviously, experience scaling enterprise SaaS, most recently fairly large, 150, $145 million P&L at Ignite. Strategic partnerships, 160 partner ecosystem, including AWS, Google, Microsoft, secured Gartner leader recognition, and raised 30 million in venture capital and holds 4 U.S. patents in telecom sector. That's pretty impressive. I don't think I know anyone that has more than one. So that's pretty impressive, my friend. Dual degree, academic foundation, MBA from UCLA. It's okay. We can still be friends, Ronan. And LLB from Tel Aviv. Also, Thomas Neal, thank you so much for coming on. He's VP and controller. 15 years experience, currently controller and VP for Celigo, leading accounting, RevOps, and their deal desk. Operational impact, reduce close times by 50%, streamlining code cache lifecycle via NetSuite and Coupa. AI pioneer, launched Celigo's agentic AI program utilizing LLMs to automate global finance workflows. Thought leader, frequently speaks on future of tech-enabled controllership and AI integration in finance. So thank you so much, Thomas, as well, for being a part of this.
all
Um,
right.
Good. We're going to get it kicked off.
Thanks, Charles. So Ronan, I think you're up first. If you can get us thinking in the right mindset now to get us jumped into this.
Okay. Well, first of all, I appreciate the kind introductions. And Charles, I don't know if we can be friends, but we'll see.
Oh, man.
So as Charles said, I'm Chief Strategy Officer here at Celigo, and what that entails, among other things, is I'm responsible for our internal AI transformation, but I also speak to a lot of customers about their AI journey and what they're trying to achieve and how they're going about doing that. And over the past year or so, I've put together this framework to help me assess where people are in their AI journey. And as I'm talking through this, I'm going to ask Charles if you could bring up the little poll that we've got on here. That'll help us calibrate the conversation as we're going forward. But really, as we're looking at this, there's really kind of four big buckets that I place folks into. The most early stage is the aspirants. These are folks that kind of know that they want to make the AI transformation. They haven't begun. Usually, there's no defined use cases, there's no attached budget, and so forth. But they know they have to start moving in the right direction. The experimenters are the folks that are running a lot of POCs. Typically, there's multiple AI tools in the organization. They're running independently. They're not connected to each other. There's some early wins, but there's not a structure around the process. Practitioners are the folks that have processes automated around the organization. They're measuring outcomes. They're building repeatable patterns. They kind of have a plan in place that they're putting into place. And the orchestrators, I will say at this point, they're fairly rare. Like there's not a lot of organizations that are in this fourth most advanced bucket. But these are the folks that have autonomous agents running in production. It's multi-system orchestration across the board. And that's kind of the frontier of where we are today, right? So those are kind of the four segments. And I always like to know kind of where my audience stands when I'm having these conversations. So I can't see the poll results here for some reason. Charles, can
Yep.
you see them?
Yep. I will. So right now we're at it's still moving. People are voting as we speak. So it is about 30%, 28% aspirant. Experimenter is 57%. Practitioner is 13%. And then orchestrator is 2%.
Okay.
So,
You know what? I would say this is par for the course. It's exactly what I see when I have these conversations. A very large portion of the audience typically is in stages one and two. Much smaller portion is in the more advanced stages. For those in the audience that are in the orchestrator bucket, man, congrats. You're very advanced compared to where most of the industry is. But everybody's moving from the left to the right here. So as we're starting this conversation, What I want to focus on is a few of the challenges that people see when they're thinking about AI, and I'm going to try to help you think about how to get the framework correct before you start to kind of, build AI tooling and processes. So if you don't mind here, go to the next slide. So the reality is most AI projects today still fail, and those that don't get stuck in kind of pilot purgatory for a long time. And as I'm talking to a lot of companies out there, I see three big modes of failure that I think are worth calling out here for those that are still planning out their journey. The first is kind of this amorphous AI initiative. I would say this was more common last year. I'm still seeing it today. This often happens when somebody from the organization goes to a conference or reads an article and something like that, and then leadership comes back and says, "Look, we're going to be AI first," right? Without defining exactly what that means, without putting specific targets, objectives, budgets, and resources behind it. It's kind of this generic thing that, hey, we want to be AI first, and that creates a lot of activity and very little forward progress, right? So that's something that I see as fairly common. Luckily, I think that's starting to change. There's less of that than I used to see in the past. Another failure mode is those folks that really buy into the story here, and they're becoming overly ambitious. I was talking to a customer a couple of months ago that was telling me about their AI journey and kind of how their pilots were in the end, they worked out, but they were very, very challenging for them. And one of their key conclusions was, hey, maybe we should have started not with our most complex territory. Maybe we should have started with kind of a smaller market, tested things out before scaling out, right? So this is kind of what I mean by that. If you're just starting with AI, you probably don't want to start with kind of the biggest challenge that you can think of right out of the gate, right? And the third element, and this is something that I see a lot more of these days, is kind of failure to create kind of the change management that's necessary to make this happen. When folks kind of are thinking about AI, because they're not sure of how this is going to work out, very often you see organizations that are becoming too timid in how they do that. So rather than trying to engineer a new process, they build kind of a parallel track to the existing process. And because humans are risk averse, we don't like change. If you let me do something the way I've been doing it for the past 5 years, you can be pretty sure that that's the way I'm going to do it. What you're getting if you try to do that thing is you're getting lack of adoption. You're not really transforming the organization. You've just created kind of a parallel track that doesn't really lead to success. So those are kind of some of the failure modes that I think everybody, as they're designing their AI strategy, should think about. But next, I want to call out one other really critical element here. If you could go to the next slide, please, which is the difference between employing AI for personal productivity use cases and deploying it across an organization for effect, for business automation, for ROI, and so forth. So when users use AI for their own personal productivity, the process is pretty simple. People are used to going to ChatGPT, going to Claude, going to Gemini. They bring whatever assets they need the AI to act on, whether it's files, it's images, what have you, and they ask their prompt and they get an output. It's pretty straightforward. The challenge, if you're trying to apply that same use case across an organization, is that the data is siloed across a bunch of different applications. So if you could hit the next button there, you have a bunch of different applications, each with their own dedicated AI tools typically built in, because these days, every SaaS vendor out there knows that they have to offer AI capabilities. So if you're using, say, NetSuite, that might have its own internal AI capability, and that's typically scoped down to NetSuite itself. If you're using Salesforce, the same will apply there. Your HR system might have the exact same process. But the very definition of business processes is spanning like multiple systems and across departments and automating kind of entire flows to create the ROI that you're looking for. So this model has a number of implications. First of all, a lot of companies buy AI tools from many different vendors in a way that essentially replicates their spending, because a lot of these tools that are inherent to like individual SaaS solutions tend to be wrappers around an LLM. So you're paying again and again and again for the same LLM that you might already have a license for. The second thing is, because these systems are not connected, the data that they're using might not be the same data. The results, therefore, might not be the same. That adds not just complexity and confusion, it also prevents team members from knowing where to go to get their information. And all of that results in poor adoption and really the process not kind of shaking out the way people hope when they're thinking about deploying AI. So when we saw this at Celigo for our own internal operations, we wanted to solve it. We came up with a process that we call operationalized AI. And the foundation of this process or this approach is to look at AI, first of all, holistically across processes, but get the initiatives, the individual projects that we're working on are surfaced at the grassroots by department heads, right? And so these are the folks that are closest to the need, to the business need. And they're also the folks that know their applications, their tooling, and their existing processes. And then we automate across an entire process to achieve the objective that we set out with AI. And this is exactly where I'm going to hand it off to Thomas, who's going to give you some examples for how this is done in practice. But hopefully this gives you a sense of the framework that is applicable for getting success with AI here.
Thank you,
So
Ronan. Appreciate that.
I'm going to turn the stage over.
Thomas, before we hand it to you, we got to do our first polling question. Just shout out to everybody on the call. We're in the process of getting our masterclass program CPE certified. So we have to go through this process. So there'll be 3 polling questions here today. If you could help us, fill these out, it'd be greatly appreciated. And then in the future, you can come to these and get CPE credit would be ideal for everybody, I think, who has a CPA. So Charles, if you launch that polling question, that'd be great. If you can help us fill this out, greatly appreciated.
Sorry, I'm sitting here talking on mute. Yeah, no, you guys are fast. Within like seconds, we had like 60 people on there. So 25% under 1 year, 2 to 4 years is 25%, and then 50% is 5+ years. So
all right,
tenured NetSuite people in there.
All right, thank you to those who participated. Really appreciate it. And with that, we'll hand it over to Thomas. Thomas, I'm going to stop sharing my screens because I think you want to share your screen, right?
Sir.
All right. It's all yours.
My share set up. Well, first of all, very happy to be here. Very excited for the conversation. I think, anyone who's been paying attention to AI for the last year knows how far we've come. And a lot of things that were just pipe dreams a year ago are now very much a reality. It's amazing how fast the technology's moved. And it's moving so fast, it's nearly impossible to really stay at the forefront. So, looking at that first poll question, with the majority of people being in the aspirant or experimenter, I think that's normal, right? I feel like I'm pretty advanced, but I would still put me in the experimenter bucket because I'm always trying to play with stuff, always finding new things I can do. And it's always really exciting. And so, as Ronan also said, a big part for me with AI is kind of starting easy. Right? Start with some simple things, start with some things that you know really well, and start playing with the technology. And I purposely use the word play there, just that you just play around with it, see what it can do, see what it can't do, see what its limitations are. I haven't met anyone that is so fully confident in exactly what it can do and has all the best use cases laid out. People are always developing and experimenting and finding new things. And so kind of how I set up this slide deck was with that in mind of, hey, I know that we're probably all at varying levels. So let's start out with kind of the basics, right? Which is AI basics, right? Now, I did skip over prompt engineering because I do feel like Probably everyone understands what prompt engineering is. But I wanted to call out a couple very interesting developments. And these now, I guess, are about 6 months old, maybe even 8 months old, things that have launched within different LLMs. So one of the first ones is deep research. So I don't know if people know what deep research is, if it's something that you've used, but in finance and accounting, deep research is extremely useful. Now, one, takes a long time. Two, it is costly if you're paying on a usage-based model. It costs more than running your standard prompts because it does so much more research in the background when it's giving you any of the topics. And you see some of the use cases here, like technical accounting research. It is amazing at that. Financial statement disclosure research. It's awesome at that. When you have to write a new footnote in your financial statements, you don't really know what to go with. Maybe you got a little something from your auditor, but you can just unleash it on the SEC portal and it will go and find every single footnote that's related to that, bring them all back, give you examples. It's really, really powerful. So I'm actually going to pull up, you can see one here on the side, and this is literally one that I did, right? I was working to roll out a new expense platform. And I was like, hey, I probably should refresh my travel policy. Not that anyone besides Ronan reads it, but it's that, it needed to be updated. It hadn't been updated in a few years. I've been here about 3 years, and I updated it when I first got here. It was time for a refresh, right? A lot of things have changed, especially prices, over the last 3 years. So I just said, hey, and you can see, not even that good of a prompt, right? But go look at my travel policy and come back and tell me what things stick out and what things I might need to change. And you see it's like smart enough, like, hey, domestic airfare. Went out, looked at what my cap was, looked at what recent airfare prices were. It asked me about like where my normal routes were and stuff like that, and came back and pulled back great information that like, hey, your cap's probably a little bit low, right? That's probably something that you want to increase. And so let me escape there for a second and show like, here's another example of deep research that I think probably is one that a lot of people are thinking about, especially for us in the SaaS business, right? Of like, I asked it, hey, look, we're releasing a new AI feature. Kind of gave it some basics of what we thought this AI feature would do, what we might think of different pricing ideas, and then asked it, what are other companies doing? What are the holes that I'm not seeing in the strategy that I'm thinking about? And where should we land? And I'm not going to go through all this because it's crazy, but you can see the amount of data that this pulls back. And I'm going to go to the very bottom, which is the conclusion. But this is all of the websites that it went to find what different people's pricing models were, what they were using, how they've launched their products. I mean, if I asked one of my best accountants to go do this research for me, I don't think I would get this much information back. And if I did, it takes weeks. I mean, this is a lot of work to go through and compile all this, and it can just pull it back. I mean, this took about, I think, 30 minutes, right? And most of them take about 30 minutes to run. And I wish I could get to it. But the other one I want to say about prompt engineering, I was going to use this as an example, but I can't remember how to get back to show the exact prompt I wrote. I wrote a really bad prompt, right? Really basic, one paragraph, a bunch of run-on sentences. Then I put that into Gemini and said, hey, Gemini, I'm going to run a deep research. Rewrite this prompt to be optimized for a deep research using Gemini. And then it rewrote the prompt exactly like you'd want it to. It gave it the persona. It gave it what the outcome would be. It gave it guardrails on what it should be researching, what it should be pulling back, right? So anytime I'm writing a big prompt that I'm going to be using for something like this, I go ahead and just let the LLM write the prompt for me, which is kind of funny, but I'm telling you, you'll get superior results by doing that. So let me jump back into this one. I hope when I share it doesn't take me back to the very beginning. It is. Uh-oh. I did not plan on that one.
Just scroll fast. You're doing great.
Exactly. We'll get there, I promise. Okay. So maybe I'll get through these and then I'll jump back to the examples so I don't have to do that too many times. The other one are custom GPTs, or what Gemini calls gems. Every LLM has a different version of this, but these are things that you can create. So if you have a task that you do over and over and over, and you keep having to essentially write the same prompt, give it the same persona, maybe give it the same support, you can create a custom GPT or a gem that has all that embedded in it. So that way you can just query it and you can just ask it questions. Like the one that's over here, right? Being a controller, oversee revenue accounting. I have a lot of questions about ASD 606. We're a SaaS company. We have evolving products. My sales team loves to keep me on my toes with all kinds of special offers and discounts and things that I need to understand how that's going to impact the 606, which is our revenue accounting. So I created this ASD 606 helper, and you can see this is my prompt. It's very, very specific. And it also has guardrails as far as, hey, you need to only look at the Big Four accounting guidance. And then also when you look at the output, it tells it, I want you to create me a table that shows all of the Big Four accounting firms and goes through what all of their guidance says. And the other key one on this, when it's like accounting research, is I also tell it, you have to always include links. And that's one of my ways to make sure that it's not hallucinating, right? Because I know that it has a link there that I could read this. I don't know, that seems a little fishy. I can click on it and it actually opens up the Big Four accounting guide where it got that. When I started this one, I actually had just fed it the Big Four accounting guidance for their, everyone calls it something different, but like for example the Freds or the FRDs from EY. I just put that in its knowledge base, but I actually found that to be a little bit limiting. And so I actually removed those and then instead put the guardrail that it has to look at all the Big Four guidance. And then I'm actually getting better results by pulling that in. So there's actually nothing solved or saved in its knowledge base besides just this prompt. And this prompt goes a long way. And you see, like, there's a lot of different examples here, right? Technical accounting research, once again, they're great for that. So I use this one for 606 because I get a lot of 606 questions directly and I want to be able to get answers fast. I have other accountants on my team who specialize in different areas of accounting. They've created these for themselves for the areas where they might have questions about kind of what they're doing in their daily journal entries, jobs, and reconciliations. This financial statement disclosure, this one I thought was really interesting, right? Which is journal entry and recon preparation. I left it on here, but this just shows you how fast things have evolved. I would say 6 months ago, I was working on an entire program and had a vision where I thought I could create a custom GPT per journal entry, per recon, and I was going to be able to run them. And we'll get to how you run things agentically here in a bit. But I was going to be able to run them and automate all the journal entries. So I'm trying to get down to the 1 day close that you hear, that theory mythical animal out there. I'm trying to figure out how I can get there. And that's what I thought. Now, and we're going to talk about this one next. Now with Claude being released, and specifically the plugin for Claude, Excel, the plugin for Excel that Claude has, I've totally changed that vision because it can go so much better and it does such a better job at reconciliations and journal entries that now we're shifting to starting to build on there. So let me go to that one real quick. The really interesting thing here, right? And so I'm lucky. We are very much an AI first company. My CFO lets me have all these different tools to use. And that's important because the advancement in the different tools and their different use cases are very much still evolving. And what works really well 6 months ago gets outpaced by someone else a little bit later. Like we're not where it's just parity. Not all LLMs are the same, which is, not everyone will be as lucky to be able to do that. But right now, Claude or Anthropic, which Claude's their product, it is by far the best for accounting and finance from just the business use case. How smart it is to be able to understand the business language and pull data back is truly revolutionary for us. And the other really cool thing, obviously NetSuite, is NetSuite has an MCP, and I'm going to get into MCPs actually in the next section, but NetSuite has an MCP, and you can connect your NetSuite directly to Claude, and I can query my NetSuite transactions, my reports, everything in Claude right here in an LLM in natural language, right? That's extremely powerful. So there's so many things that you can do with this one. So let me show an example of that one. And I actually just realized how I could have done the screen sharing better, but let's see. All right, it'll pop up. So unfortunately, I just restarted my computer, so I lost my prompts, but I'll say what my prompts were. All I said to this was pull my AR aging report and pull my customer history or customer payment history, right? So 2 reports, that's all I said. I didn't give them the real report names. I just said those 2 things. And then I said, anonymize all customer data and make sure that you keep the customers synced between reports with the same anonymous number. Because of course, I can't sit here and show you all of my customer data. That would have been a nightmare to do if I had to do it myself. It took it a bit, I'm not gonna lie, about 5 minutes. But I started here, right? Blank sheet. And then it pulled my AR aging, boop, anonymized all the customers, put it in a dashboard. 100% came from Claude. I didn't do any of this, right? Then it gave my customer payments. Okay, same thing, anonymized. Once again, 100% Claude did this. I didn't touch it. Then I said, based on my customer payment history and my outstanding AR balance and the trends that you see in current customer payments, forecast what my cash flow, what I should expect is my cash flow for all of my receivables listed into aging. that sounds kind of hard, right? I wouldn't have expected AI to be able to do that. Well, here we go. This is once again all of it. I didn't format this. I didn't touch this, right? But it went through. It said, okay, here's what I expect by bucket. Here's what all your expected collections are by week. Here's what you'll collect out of each bucket. Here's your cumulative collections, top 10 customer forecast, risk analysis, and an executive summary, right? I mean, it's pretty crazy. And I did this for real with my real data when this first launched about 3 weeks ago. I mean, this is out for about 6 weeks. But about 3 weeks ago when I found out about it and started using it, I did this with my real customer data. And the collection analysis has been within 5% of actuals. So I didn't like ever go in and like detail test it to make sure it's 100% accurate. It is just a forecast. But the fact that it's tracking that accurately is pretty amazing. And I did not expect that at all. I thought, oh, well, it's pretty, but it's going to be really wrong. No, it's been really, really correct. Another example, right, is I got asked by an auditor, hey, can you, I see that there's a pretty big increase in APIC. Can you explain to me what the increase in APIC for 2025 was and what caused this? Just went to Claude and said, look at the transactions in APIC for 2025 and categorize them by type and give me a write-up for each category and then link the accounting guidance of why that's the correct treatment. Boom. Did it, pulled it all back within 5 minutes, right? I mean, of course, I could have downloaded the NetSuite report, went through all of it, but how fast you can do that once you have this connected to NetSuite is truly amazing. And it's not only NetSuite that you can connect it to, right? Once you understand how MCP servers work, you can connect it to pretty much anything. So get that out of the way. So last one.
That was a good one too, Thomas. I don't want to cut you off, but you're the one who just told me about, just as prepping for this meeting. I didn't realize that they have that Excel connector and stuff too. But it sounds like that came out pretty recently. Is that right?
Yeah. It's only been, like I said, I think 4 weeks now.
Okay. That was cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. And so I wanted to cover on like vibe coding, right? Because I think we've all heard the term. I don't think everyone quite understands what it means. But you saw this on the last slide. I kind of went through it. But the other thing that Claude has is Claude also has a connector for PowerPoint. So you probably can see like this slide. I don't think it looks as good as the other slide. Claude built this slide for me off of 4 sentences that I gave it. 100%. Now you'll see the branding looks nice, I think. It looks on brand for Celigo. That's because in my Claude, I also fed it all of Celigo's branding guidelines so that it always follows them, right? So I always have the right colors. I always have the right fonts. It always only will do certain things, right? So I think that's pretty cool, right? I could have built a better slide, but this took me 2 minutes, right? Rather than me having to sit there in 20, 30 minutes, and I probably would have played with it for hours if we're telling the truth. But that's pretty cool. But so anyways, what's a vibe coding, right? So the vibe coding is the idea that, anyone, but I'll keep it, to finance and accounting, right? That you can go in and plain language tell your LLM what you want to do, especially when it comes to actually creating code to create true software products. And it will generate the code for you. And then the part where a lot of people, especially in finance and accounting, get stuck is like, okay, well, I got this code. It looks pretty. Maybe it gives you like a little demo that works. But how do I launch it, right? Like, how do I actually get it out there, right? That's the question I always have people ask. You just ask the LLM, and it will walk you through it step by step by step. And this is somewhere where I know Ronan and I differ. We have a little side bet going here on how this is going to evolve, right? Because now creating software, creating applications that can be used for your teams is so much easier. Should I be spending my time creating software applications to automate my processes? Or will much smarter developers than me, because I'm obviously not a developer, start doing that same thing and creating these new technologies super fast that are super flexible? And then we see a flood of new technologies hitting the market. I was on a webinar this morning that we have every week. That's like this vibe coding one where everyone just kind of brings stuff they've been vibe coding. It's like, hey, look at what I did. And one of the controllers had vibe coded an entire CPQ. And he was like, look, I had this like really bad Google sheet that we all hated, and it had all of our pricing in it. And I took it over because I wanted control, because no one was controlling pricing, and it was wasting so much of my time, right? And so he created all in Claude code from scratch and launched a web application where his sellers can go in, can configure products. It attaches to their CLM, everything. I mean, I left that super inspired. I've not done anything to that degree, but it really is out there. There's a lot that you can do. And so when you hear vibe coding, That's really what it means. So don't think that you're limited to just asking your LLM to give you questions. And maybe if you're lucky, you can get it to give you a spreadsheet or something. You can think about actual applications that can transform your entire department. And I think that's where a lot of us are starting to see a lot of potential. It's starting to go. So jumping in real quick, time check. Okay. MCP servers, right? I think most people have heard the word MCP, right? Which is Model Context Protocol. But like, what is it really, right? An MCP is just the way that data is configured that an agent, an AI agent, right, can then get that information in the way it understands, right? But there's a couple problems with MCPs right now. They're new, right? So not all of them are made really well. Some of the MCP servers are really good. I think NetSuite's is actually pretty good. But then on the NetSuite side, it's massive. You can essentially get everything, right? So if you connect NetSuite MCP to Claude, for example, and it's fully provisioned, right? You can grab anything. Maybe some stuff that you don't want other people, certain people to see, right? Like, hey, me in finance controller, okay, I can see everything, right? That's fine. But if I have someone in support that needs to go in there only to see very specific information about license provisioning or something, I don't want them to be able to pull financial data, right? And so it can be difficult on how you provision those MCPs and make sure that they're safe in what data people can get. Then the second part is not every company has adopted MCPs, right? So a good example is Salesforce. Salesforce doesn't have an MCP, but it does have an open API, right? And in the end, you can build an MCP using an API. You're just using the same concept, but you're restructuring it in a way that's meaningful to the agentic agents. So one of the beauties that I learned literally last week when I was kind of talking about this problem of like, I have this idea with Claude for reconciliations for my partner commissions, my sales commissions, and all that. But my big problem is I'm trying to pull Salesforce data and NetSuite. I want it to be agentic. I don't want to be running a Salesforce report and then putting it into the sheet. So I was talking to some team members about them. They're like, oh, well, why don't you just build an MCP server? And I was like, I don't really know what that is. So I got educated very well on it last week. And what you can use Celigo to do is build your own MCP servers. So what we did is we built a Salesforce server that was structured in a really smart way, that was specific to the data that I was trying to look for. And then we were able to expose that to my Claude. So now I can ask Claude questions about differences in Salesforce data, closed won ops, sales orders, and it knows how to pull it and compare it and can do that recon. That's one of the biggest recons we do. Now, I still don't have it truly agentic yet as far as scheduled and how that would be kicked off, but it's super interesting. And you can create custom MCP servers. Like I saw another, one of our solution consultants who created a Salesforce Gong server, right? Gong that we use to record all of our sales calls. And he also had some special tools in there, but he literally just goes into Claude and is like, I have a call coming up with this customer. What should I know? And it goes and pulls all of its data from Salesforce. It pulls all of its, all the calls. It talks about, well, here are the things you've talked to this customer about, all these reminders. I mean, a super useful tool. I mean, in seconds, he has something that would have taken him 20, 30 minutes, right? If he was trying to go and find all of that himself. So they can be extremely powerful. And it's something, it's a concept that people just need to know about. So and this is once again kind of bridging, right? So there's some basic ways you can use LLMs that we all maybe already knew about, hopefully learn some new stuff. MCP servers, they really are unlocking the more agentic piece of what you want to do with AI. So I'm going to go into agentic AI, and I'm going to also start here with some pretty basic stuff, and then how it's grown, right? I would say one of the very first ideas that we had, right, was Slack bots, which makes a lot of sense, right? And so we use Celigo. All of these are things that we use Celigo for, right? So you see Celigo here in the middle, which goes back to like what Ronan was talking about. You have all these applications, right? And they only talk to themselves, right? How do you connect them? And so Celigo can kind of be that glue in the middle, right? And so you have, in this case, of course, Slack. Someone goes into Slack, asks a question. In this case, I use Zendesk to be my document repository. So this specific one is a T&E inquiry agent, right? Someone has a question about the T&E policy. They don't have to email me anymore. They can go on Slack. They can just ask this bot, hey, I mean, this example, can I book business class ticket? I get asked this so many times. It's crazy. The answer is no, you cannot, right? But this tells you. So it pulls it back. Hey, you can't. This is why. You know, if you have any more questions, you can reach out to AP. pretty basic concept. It's called the Finance AI bot because we're also expanding it to handle payroll questions and equity questions, right? Because you can answer any question. And the beauty of having the repository is like I control the policy. So anytime I want to update the policy, I just go drop it in that repository. What the AI is doing, or the bot is doing in the middle, is it's going to that repository and it's reviewing all of the information in there so that it knows the most current information. So if I change and say, oh, no, never mind, everyone can fly business class, right? I put that in the new policy, I drop it in the repository, everyone can access it, or the bot can access it, and everyone gets that new information. So every year when we publish new policies, I just drop them in there, and all of these get up to date. And you can imagine there's tons of use cases here. So another one for this, right, back to the MCP, and I'm sure, I don't think NetSuite's on the phone, but one thing that NetSuite won't like about that is that, so if you have the native NetSuite MCP, I have to log in as my user, right? And then the credentialing is based off of my user. If I'm running it through a Slack bot with a custom MCP server, I'm credentialing it through Celigo itself. So instead of having my 60 support reps with access to NetSuite, I have one user that has the MCP setup that they need. They can go to Slack, they can query the reports that they use, and they can get it pulled back to them in Slack by utilizing one user.
Thomas, you're not supposed to do licensing loopholes on the call, man. I'll just, take that with a grain of salt. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. So, and there's just different ways, right? And the way that you can call the data and the way that you can get data back, right? So I think that it is, somewhat of a gray area of what the MCP servers can do, how they're utilized, and how they work with the systems. Because I will say, once again, every way that you set up one of those servers, that does have to be, individually licensed as a user, right? So you can also be using up those licenses in the same way, depending on what that use case is. But thank you for the heads up, Dean.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, any user or anybody's always trying to figure that out, and I get asked all the time. So I think it's actually pretty cool. Yeah.
So this is one of my other favorite ones. And this one was a big light bulb moment for me. So this was our customer 360 agent. I wish I could take credit for this one. I cannot. Someone much smarter than me thought of this one. You're going into a customer call, right? You have a question, or you want to know as much as you can about that customer. But there's not that data is everywhere, right? You can see here, well, it starts in Slack, but data in Salesforce, call information in Gong, data that comes from Snowflake, usage from Gainsight, Zendesk, which in this case would be representing support tickets, right? So we have a Slack channel set up, and it is actually right here, right? Ignore this. This is an old approval that I used to have in here, but the same Slack bot. But you have the Slack bot. You go to here. I go to account summary, account name. I enter in a customer, and then it's going to say, okay, let me find that customer, right? I didn't even enter the full name, but it's going to find that customer. And then it's going to ask me, hey, is this the customer you want? I'm going to say yes. I'm not going to make us watch the whole thing. Well, there we go, right? Acme Chocolatiers. I choose, and then it's going to run a custom real-time data set about all of this information about this customer. So if I'm getting on a call, and I actually use this a lot, like I get on sales calls with our customers to talk about AI use cases, to talk about how I use Celigo in accounting and finance. I do this first. And I go see, and it tells me about their executive summary, right? You can see it over here, their account overview, what they're using, what, company snapshot. Do they have any support tickets, right? What's the engagement been like? What are the key contacts and what are their roles in the company? Super useful. But for me, the light bulb moment for finance and accounting was like, well, wait a second. And I think I have to skip 2 for this one because I know I'm kind of running out of time anyways. But it was, hey, that's the exact same thing I think that my AR team should be doing when they're trying to collect from our customers who have not paid, right? Like you should be looking at, has sales talked to this customer? What do their entitlements look like? What does their usage look like? Are they having issues? What do their tickets look like? Because like almost probably every company on NetSuite, right? We have our standard Dunnings, but after day 15 past due, we stop the standard Dunnings, and then we go to what I call advanced collections. And one of my AR collectors starts manually emailing and following with customers and trying to figure out what's going on, right? So it stops being system generated. But the truth is, my collectors are just taking a template that we wrote a long time ago. They're just copying and pasting it and putting in invoice numbers and amounts. They're not actually doing all of this research. If they did all this research, I'd need a lot more collectors because it would take so much time. So instead, what I set up was an agentic flow that lives in Gmail itself. I mean, it lives in Celigo, but it goes in Gmail. And then, well, actually, it starts in NetSuite, goes in NetSuite, pulls an aging, and says, hey, what customers have hit 35 days past due, which is when we start this process, which each one of those customers go to all of these systems, do all of that research, and then come back with an email that is tailored to that customer and their current situation and their use cases with Celigo, right? Now, one that I'm going to say is definitely not a best practice, but I haven't figured out a better way. I'm sure someone on here probably is going to have a way better way right there in their head. Is you do see this yellow line, which it says like delete before sending, right? And you also see there's no recipient in the line. That I keep all those notes down here at the bottom because this isn't truly agentic. It doesn't go out on self. I want someone to be reviewing this, human in the loop, as we call it, right? So my human in the loop is that it writes this email, it saves it in the AR mailbox, and then my AR team goes through these, one of my collectors, and they review the email, make sure it's accurate, make sure it's correct, read if they should add anything else based on those notes, delete those notes below, and then enter the recipients and send it, right? And so it's actually living in their mailbox. Like if they were going to write and do all this research, I mean, this would be a 1 to 2 hour email. Instead, it's 5 minutes, right? And so I'll go back one slide because another one was AR inquiry agent, right? So this one's like, look, you get a lot of repetitive questions in AR. So we set up an agent that looks for those repetitive questions and automatically writes an email, drafts it, same thing, saves it as a draft. My team comes in, reviews those emails and sends them. But the reason I go back on this one is because introducing these two agents dropped our DSO by 7 days over a quarter. And it's staying down, right? It wasn't like a one-time anomaly. Like it was a meaningful impact on our cash collections, our working capital management, and our cash flow by introducing these two. So I have more in here. I'm happy to answer any questions, to talk about more. I'll do this one real quick just because it is kind of funny, right? You saw when I pulled up this, I was saying, hey, ignore this old expense bot. So when we very first, this kind of shows like how AI is advanced. You can see this is from 2025, right? So almost a year ago. When we first introduced this, the idea was like, hey, let's make it easier for people to approve expense reports. So we set up an agent that was pulling the information from our Coupa, which is our system, into Slack. So managers could just approve in Slack. It speeds it up. It makes it much easier for them. But then that evolved to like, well, wait a second. A lot of these are repetitive requests, and a good example being that one, right? Which was like a internet allowance. They get that allowance every month, right? As long as there's a receipt attached, and as long as the amount is within the policy, there's no reason me or anyone on my team would ever reject that. And so instead, we set up an AI agent that goes and looks at every single one of that type of expense report, reviews all the documentation, make sure that it's not a duplicate, make sure that the receipt is for the right month, make sure all the data is entered correct, and if it is, it approves on our behalf, of the manager's behalf and the accounting team's behalf. That was like 350 expense reports a month. That was a lot of time, right? And now it's automatic and none of us have to see them again. And it was like just the evolution of like how we, as AI advanced, like we were able to introduce something like that, even though it started out, as I'd say, pretty basic. Okay. Like I said, there's more in here. I'm sure we'll send out the deck. There's a couple AP examples in here as well, but I know I'm way over. So I will give it back to you, Dean.
Dude, Thomas, thank you so much. That was great. Learned a lot in here. And yeah, we will be sharing the deck afterwards. So if you guys want, anybody who attended, we'll be sure to get that out to you if you want it. But thanks, Thomas. That was great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to bring up one more, another polling question here. Let me share my
Hey, Dean, we have a couple questions. Did you want to?
Do we have a lot or just a few?
3, and they're all from April.
Okay, yeah, we can take them really quick while I'm bringing up my screen.
Yeah, let's do that. So April asks, with Anthropic as a sub-processor for Microsoft Now, have you tested Copilot using Anthropic Claude to NetSuite?
So I had a Copilot license, and I did test a lot of Copilot. I could not get Copilot to do a lot of useful things for me, to the point where I actually, after a month of just kind of testing and playing with Copilot, I fully switched over to Claude, and I gave up my Copilot license to someone else in the company because I just couldn't get it to work well enough. But as I did say, though, I do think Copilot's going to take a jump at some point, right? And so I think it is interesting to keep an eye on Copilot. But Claude really knocked it out of the park with the Microsoft applications.
I just launched poll question number 3 while we go through these. And then did you build a use case for ETL cleanup and or a traffic cop of sorts with processes for NetSuite?
I mean, so everything that we do, once again, for the MCP server side, as far as who can extract information directly from NetSuite, two things. One is it's very limited right now, right? It's only limited to myself and a couple of other executives and some key managers in my accounting team who can use it. And right now it is 100% write or read only. And so there's no like loading back to NetSuite at this point. That is something I'm very close to unlocking because I'm getting more confident in it. But it is a very good question of like, okay, well, where is that review? Where is that traffic cop to make sure that what's getting back in there? So on that AR example, one of the very common AR inquiries is update my billing email, right? So in that case, in that specific server that I built for that, I didn't build it, but for that specific server, MCP server I built for that flow, it can write back to NetSuite and it will update the billing information. But once again, it saves a draft email. And part of my team's responsibility is to review that email, go and check that that update in NetSuite was correct and that it is the right billing address and it was a legitimate request that they received as that part of kind of review, human in the loop, but an approval for there. It is very interesting though. Once again, it's getting better. I don't think we're that far. And I know a lot of controllers that do let it directly right to NetSuite. But I was in one of those vibe coding sessions and watching a guy, luckily in his sandbox, query a AR question to Claude. And then when he went into his NetSuite, like it just changed a bunch of data. He did not ask it to do that. It just did. So definitely have to be careful for sure. And that's why I don't allow write capability. And when we do, once again, very, very custom MCP server that'll be very limited in what it even has the ability to write to.
Gotcha. And Dean, maybe this is a question for you or us. ScaleNorth, can this AR advanced collections agent complement your Dunning accelerator you launched? This almost looks like it could be a replacement of sorts.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to look at the use cases and see. Definitely ours doesn't have AI involved at the moment. It's more of just within NetSuite sending out reminders and follow-ups. So I think this is probably a more robust use case, but you also have to probably have Celigo to make that work. So I think the goal is to look at the requirement and, make sure that we're aligning the right solution based on the actual requirement. Maybe, yeah, that's really what I would say, Charles.
Yep.
I'd say a lot of it is the segregation of data, right? I mean, if you're a company that is fully leveraging NetSuite and all of its bells and whistles 100%, you don't have that data silo problem where you have to bring it all back together. We just have very segregated data at Celigo. I mean, on purpose, because we pick the tools that we like, and then that's the way to kind of bring all that data back in. But there's plenty of companies that you could, get all of that data from one source.
Yeah, I'd say to add on point there, and everybody on this call is probably frustrated because it's like one of NetSuite's selling points is one system, right? You don't need a bunch of all this stuff. That's why you go with one system. But over time, next thing you know, well, you need a field service for this, or you need a whatever for that. You need a CR. So it's kind of going backwards where now it's still that core platform, your core source of truth, your core ERP, which is great, but you want some of these other, bells and whistles and things. There's other people doing it better. So that's where Celigo really helps because to your point, Thomas, I want to use the best tools and best tech stack to grow and scale my business. I don't want to use what I have to, so it's kind of keeps doing that shift where it's the hairball thing and then it's the one system and now we're kind of back to a hairball and it just keeps going through iterations. And I'm sure Ronan has some thoughts on that too, but that's been coming up a lot as well.
And real quick, I see that this one's in the chat. I'm not sure how to reply back in the chat, so I don't want to get lost or convoluted. But a three-way reconciliation, bill, payments, departments. So one of them, and it's in the deck. I didn't go there. That is actually an AP automation that we did build using Celigo. Could you do it in Claude? Yes, you could. And for sure, the whole vibe coding idea, more complex, but you could build a system that does that. And you just start asking Claude how to do it. I'm very confident in that. For myself, we have Celigo, obviously. And so it was pretty easy to build using what we have, attaching Coupa to NetSuite and our contract repository, pulling back all the contract data, looking at all the prior codes, and then using AI to make a really smart assessment of what the right GL coding would be, what the payment histories are. Is this covered by the PO? Is this look like the right amount that should be coming from the contract? And then putting all that in notes actually in Coupa so that the approvers can kind of have a much better view of the information that they should be reviewing.
All right. Well, thank you. Did we get most of the questions that were out there, Charles?
Yep, we got all of them.
All
And
right,
then
and we got people responded to the poll.
yep, 37% ChatGPT, 47% Claude, 5% Gemini, and 10% other.
All right.
We have about 61 people answer, so good
Okay.
good mix. So it sounds like Claude the winner, ChatGPT second and almost 40%, and then Gemini 5%, 10 other.
Really, yeah, it really falls out after those two. All right, so if we end that, then I'm gonna take over and jump into some actual use cases and demonstrate some examples as well. Let me close this out and let me go to the next slide. All right, so there's 3 use cases I'm going to run us through, and in the convenience of time, we'll try to go a little quick here so we can get to some more Q&A and collaboration. But the first example that we did, you can see it was a project risk automation. Now, I actually built this out in, can everybody hear me okay still, Charles? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I actually built this automation out in NetSuite first in one of our previous master classes using the native workflow engine and all this stuff. But I still had to write a script. I had to get with one of my developers to write a script to make it work. And the cool thing about Celigo is it's no code. I literally connected a saved search, connected AI, made it automate the process with no code. No code, drag and drop configuration. So we're going to show that example first. The second example we'll look at is we do this literally as a company, doing sales research, making sure that we're updating a lead record and kind of pulling in some of that data. So this example would be a low code and drag and drop configuration. We have 3 endpoints. It's NetSuite, ChatGPT, and then we use Box as our file repository system. So we're going to show how you can do that and go through that flow. And then the last use case that we'll look at is one of my PE firm operating partners gave me an idea. I was asking him, what would you like to see? What would be interesting? She said, if you could automate a CFO board deck, right? I was like, well, I mean, I know you probably can. To Thomas's point, you could probably just ask Claude and it will do it, and you can try stuff. But it's one of those things. Try it with the tools you have available to you and tweak it and see what works and doesn't. So we started working on that one, and I'll walk us through that. We kind of have it working. It's not fully dialed, but I still want to show you where it's at because it's kind of interesting. So those are the 3 use cases we're going to go through, and I'll stop sharing my screen and bring up NetSuite to get us started. So let me do that really quick if I can. Let's see. Do you guys see NetSuite, Charles?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So the first one that we want to look at was the project risk example. So I have a saved search here. Let me bring that up first as an example. Put that in here. So basically, this is a saved search that's looking at some project records in NetSuite. Pretty basic. I filtered it down for now just to have a list, but it's telling you who the project manager, the status. It has some information about the project, like what was the planned work, what's the actual work. Just it has data about a project. So we started with that saved search. I can now bring up the Celigo flow that's going to show how this orchestrates and runs. So let me bring that up really quick. So we'll come over here. Let me log in here for a sec. Okay, so this is my flow, and it's pretty basic, right? You can see it's not like there's a lot going on here. I basically connect my NetSuite. This is the saved search. So if I actually click into this, you'll see how easy it is to set one of these up. I give it a name. I connect it to my NetSuite instance. I say what record types, this is related to. These are obviously project records in NetSuite. I have a saved search that I just showed you guys over here. This is the search. So I just literally can link that saved search to this connection, and I'm hooked up. That's it. There's a couple pieces of data to fill out. I'm online, got NetSuite connected. Then the next thing was I want to be able to feed the results of those projects into a ChatGPT prompt and let it analyze the data to see, do any of these projects look like they're at risk? So add a connection. We basically set up ChatGPT. You connect it, you see it's online. You just say, hey, this is a chat, and I want you to basically do a chat completion. That's it. Couple pieces of information. I'm online with ChatGPT. I'm online with NetSuite, right? And then you can basically give it a mapping. So in here is where you actually put in your prompt, right? So what model of ChatGPT we're using, you give it a role. And this is no different than a prompt that you would write in ChatGPT itself, right? So I told it, hey, you're an expert project risk analyst. You'll be given data points about a project, such as deadlines, metrics, allocations, things like that. I want you to analyze the data, and I want you to tell me if you think it's at risk. And I even want you to try to give me some visual indication of the risk. Green's good, yellow's okay, red's bad. That's it. Simple chat right there. So basically, that's going to run. It's going to take the saved search, feed it into that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a mapping that will take the content from ChatGPT and actually put it into, let me see here. We're going to put it into the actual record in NetSuite. So that's what this one is doing. So once we get those results, we'll actually go to the project record, update a field, and we're going to actually flag it as risk and write back the response that ChatGPT gave us. So you can see that, I believe, here in our mapping, that we're going to take the content from ChatGPT and update the at-risk notes field. So to save us time, this could run. You could have it on schedule, which that's probably the biggest power that I've seen in having an orchestration tool like Celigo so far. Yes, everybody could do a lot of cool stuff in Claude, connected to your NetSuite, do some prompting, but it's not truly agentic if you have to prompt it, it gives you the results, and you say, yeah, no, tweak it. Okay, basically, if you're not interacting with it, it's not running. Celigo allows you to basically build out in a controlled space what you want to happen, what your workflow should be, and you could literally, once it's tested and works, that automation can be scheduled to run whenever you want. So it is truly autonomous, right, and running. So that's probably the coolest thing, and why I really am pushing the Celigo stuff, because I'm a believer now that I'm in here and actually using it, right? So to show some examples of what this actually looked like, let me go here. So I have a search that will bring up some results that were actually processed. Let's see if I can bring that up over here. Okay, so here's the 3 projects that got processed by that flow. I'll bring them up and we can just take a quick peek. So essentially, oh, hold on, what's that? I'll try this. Yeah, I don't know what's that. So basically, you can see here, it came back with a narrative, what happened, right? It's telling you why it's at risk. And the other cool thing is you can basically have emails that will go out and alert the project manager. So that was one example. Let me see if I could bring up the other one. So here's another one. It got updated, right? It's in red. It's at risk. It's telling you why, giving you the example and some next steps. And then we could take a look at the third one. Same thing. Got updated. This is what ChatGPT passed back to the NetSuite record, right? And we could spot check some of this for accuracy, because how do you know if it was right? What is it? Well, validate the data. Planned work says 108 hours. I'm looking at this project, planned work, 108 hours. Actual work, 80 hours. Actual work, 80 hours, right? So if you could spot check and validate the data, you start to feel a lot better about, all right, at least it was using accurate data when it kind of went through its analysis and it's giving me some of these suggestions and things. And you look at it and it's saying, look, I think it's at risk. Why? Your end date was February 18th. Today's the 20th. You're 31 days past due. Probably without even looking at any other data, obviously this should be looked at and somebody dropped the ball or they're not keeping it up to date. So if you can automate that first pass analysis so that you are now doing exception-based work instead of touching everything work, like Thomas's point with the expense reports, that why were we reviewing every single one when some of that could be automated? That's where the real value is. So that was our first use case. The second use case, let's go into, let's see here. So we're going to go on to our next one. Let me close some of these. So I'm going to bring up the next flow that we did, which is this sales research flow. And you'll see you start to be able to replicate and reuse some of your steps, right? That's the beauty, is you don't have to recreate everything from scratch. The concepts start to really take home. So I'm going to take a saved search of leads. I'm going to feed it into ChatGPT, right? It's going to pull some data down off of that, off the internet, research, like Thomas said. And then I want to update my lead record in NetSuite with some of those actual values that came back. Like, what's the annual revenue of the company? Who are the key contacts at the company? Why can't this stuff just be automated, right? It's just research, right? And do that. And then we're going to generate a PDF file of that ChatGPT research, and we're going to actually save it in Box, and then we're going to actually update and put a Box link on the lead record in NetSuite. This is literally what we do at Scale North in our sales department, the teams, the different tools that we use. We have Box, we have NetSuite, right? We have ChatGPT, we're doing research. It was just an example to try to automate that flow. So you can see here as an example, if we go into the prompt, I'll come in here just so you can kind of see an example again. You come down here and you kind of put your prompt, right? You are a sales prospecting agent. Keep the response detailed and in bullet form. I want you to include revenue labeled exactly as revenue. I want you to format it as such, right? You kind of got to play around with these prompts, but once you get good at prompt engineering, like Thomas said, you start to get better outcomes and better results, right? So just by incorporating this into our flow, we could then run it. And to show you what the example looked like, I literally just used Big Five Sporting Goods, probably because there's one down the street from my house and my kids are playing sports right now. And I've been there too many times in the last couple of weeks. So I'll bring up the lead record for Big Five Sporting Goods. Okay. And then we can actually see what happened, right? It went into ChatGPT, looked up Big Five Sporting Goods, wrote down all this information, right? Where they're headquartered, when they were founded, who their competitors are, how do they make money. All this stuff tells you what their annual revenue is, $1 billion, who their chief contacts are. Well, guess what? I was able to now take that information and do something with it. We updated what the annual revenue was right here on the record automatically, right? We took who their key contacts were and already put them on the NetSuite record here. It literally created those contacts for who the CFO is and all this stuff right out of this ChatGPT response. And it wrote back the Box link so that if our sales team needs to do pre-call research or whatever, they could get directly to it and see it, right? So this is just another example and use case of where you get to leverage the best things about NetSuite, the best things about your other tools, Box, and now they're orchestrating together. So it's really when it really starts to get valuable. And then the third use case, the third and last use case, so we can then get to the exciting part, which is Q&A and all that stuff, was the board deck, CFO board deck presentation. So let me go there. So for this example, I'll bring up that flow as well. So we're on to our last example here. I'll bring up that flow. And again, you're going to start to see a lot of similarities about, we're using saved searches. We're using a connection to ChatGPT, right? So this is a real cool concept that I think can be reused a lot. We're taking saved searches in NetSuite because one problem that I found, Thomas, I don't know if you've seen, is that while Claude's great, and it's really probably more of the NetSuite MCP connector than anything else, is you ask it to give you revenue, it's going to go run a sales report like what a salesperson would want to see, not a P&L or an income statement like a CFO or an accountant would want to see. So it's not really there yet. So unless you can get that prompt working perfectly, or you're somewhat limited by the capabilities of the MCP connector or the tool that's there, well, this makes it easy because I know what data I want. I already have the saved searches of all the stuff that's meaningful to me. I can just start to build out all that into a record in Celigo, and I'm passing a full payload of valuable information that I decided up front what was meaningful And now I'm going to get really good insights and results back because I'm deciding what gets passed. I'm not asking it to figure it out for me. I'm telling it what I want it to do. So we have these saved searches. It's going to go get some P&L data. It's going to go get some customer sales data. It's going to go get some departmental level data, and it's going to build that all into one record and then pass that into various ChatGPT prompts. Each one of these prompts is to help me write to a slide in my board deck. So here's my executive slide that it's going to help me generate. Here's my P&L slide. Here's my customer sales slide, right? All this stuff. And where this ends is it will actually, we hooked up Google Slides. It will create the actual deck and then update it with the contents. So one thing I wanted to point out is that if you use the NetSuite MCP connector, I'm going to bring up another thing here. So here's Claude, right? And this is hooked up to this NetSuite environment. You can actually use ScaleNorth has developed some helper tools above and beyond what the native NetSuite MCP offers out of the box. What I was telling you as an example is, it doesn't write good reports sometimes, or it doesn't go run the right reports. So we built a tool that will allow you to, in natural language as part of Claude, just tell it what you want, and it will go build the saved search for you. So here's an example. I said, create a saved search that gives me a breakdown group by account type for this year to date versus last year to date. That's it. Our ScaleNorth tool that sits over the top literally built me that search. And it's right here. It built me this search. Here's my account type. Here it is. Here's current year to date. Here's prior year to date. Here's the variance. Check this out. If you edit this, it literally wrote the criteria for me. It literally wrote the results for me. And yeah, I might be an expert, but I don't even know what the hell this formula says, but it's right, which is all that matters, right? So I was able to leverage this to quickly go and build all these saved searches that I need. And now I'm even faster, right? The time to value has been increased, right? So as an example, where I screwed up is I should have ran this thing while we were talking so it'd be done. I'm going to run it right now just to see what happens. And maybe we can take some questions. I think it'll take anywhere from a minute to 3 minutes to finish running. But Charles, if we have any questions, we can go to some Q&A right now while this is running.
Yep. Roy. Hey, Roy. I wonder if you could trigger the agentic risk assessment from the NetSuite instead of waiting for a schedule.
Do you want to elaborate further? Can we take Roy off mute?
Sure can. There you go,
Roy,
Roy.
you there?
There you go, Roy.
Hey guys, what's up?
Hey, what's
Hey,
up,
Roy.
Hey, quick question. So, you're running it on schedule, but as a project manager in that use case, I've just corrected or reduced the risk or found new information that changed the risk status. So I want to rerun this flow in Celigo, but I don't have access to Celigo. I'm an end user, right? So could you trigger it from NetSuite itself instead of waiting for the schedule?
Yeah, I would have to check. I mean, I'd imagine so with a button or a script or something like that, it might be possible. I don't know if Thomas or Ronan, I don't know if we have super technical people on the call, but maybe Thomas, did you get the question?
I get the question. I'm not 100% sure either, because normally it's the other way. I do have access to Celigo, so when I need to manually run something, you can always just go in and manually trigger a flow to do updates. But I don't have any instances where I have set up anything in NetSuite to do it. I would think that you could, but I don't want to be quoted on that.
I could find out for sure. With what I know, it seems very doable. Like pretty confident where that's doable, but obviously you might just need to do some initial setup on the NetSuite side.
So actually, I just got a lifetime answer. Yes, you can. So you actually can create a button within NetSuite that would do exactly that, or you could even create a listener that's listening for updates on specific NetSuite records or data sets, and then it would trigger it as soon as it sees that update. So there's actually 2 different ways you could do that.
Okay.
Yep. So the listener. Yep. That makes sense.
Listener. Cool. Good question, Roy.
Yep. And then looking at the other question there from Rupal, So, I mean, it's interesting. And I think that, Dean, you covered a really good point, right? I mean, part of the issue with trying to use Claude to get to NetSuite, it might be good to run some certain levels of data to pull certain things back. But once again, that MCP structure is massive and it doesn't know exactly what to look at. Like I said, I'm not prompting it really well. So it can go and it can pull in data that's not really the data you're looking for that can then lead to incorrect assumptions. So limiting that data set is extremely helpful, which is one of the things that you can leverage Celigo to do, as we said, through those custom MCPs. But the Claude NetSuite connector versus Celigo NetSuite connector, I mean, to me, are just very, very, very different, right? The Claude is just going to an MCP server within NetSuite. Celigo is a full out integration to NetSuite that can pull anything and everything within that environment. I mean, we have a very unique and I would say special connector that unlocks all kinds of capabilities that you can automate within NetSuite, which is very different than Claude just kind of going at the MCP level.
Thanks, Thomas. Was
So
there
that-
any other questions while we're kind of at that point in the class here today? We want to open it kind of up to some questions as well. And it looks like, let me refresh, this might have just finished here running. So I can actually bring up this, which creates a link to the deck that was created. And you see, we basically, it's like I said, like it's a prototype, but you see it starts to take shape where you can start to fill out a board deck. It's taking the numbers right from NetSuite. We want to kind of validate that against an income statement to make sure it's right as the accountant in us. 5,609,000 is revenue. Cost of sales 2.3, gross profit 3.2. Looks like we lost $2 million, which is not great. So if we view that again, let's just see here. Those numbers are flowing over. Zoom in a little bit so you can see. Let's see. 5,609, 2.3, 3.2, and a loss of 2 million. So like you could start basically, if you had a formatted reporting package that you want, obviously you got to get your prompts right and we still got to tweak this a little bit, but like it starts to really take shape where you can control the output and what you want and then automate it. There's a lot of potential in this use case. So that, I hope that demonstrates a little bit of different, flavors and variations of things. Obviously, we're mostly focused on the NetSuite side because that's our expertise and experience in what we do. We are also a Celigo partner and have a lot of experience with Celigo, but it's really using the tools that are available to you, like Thomas showed. Claude, Excel, MCP connectors, NetSuite, Celigo. If you to put it all together, you just want to make sure that you're accessing and you have access to the right toolkits to start taking advantage of some of this automation.
So there was one question in chat I was going to jump on from Travis, right? So is there a Celigo chatbot that can reference different sources? And absolutely, right? I think I understand what you're asking here. I mean, that's the beauty of Celigo, right? I should know the number of connectors we have, but it's a crazy amount of connectors. So if you have if any software, any system out there, even custom built systems out there that you're trying to query information from, you can use Celigo to connect that. And so whatever you want that chatbot, wherever you want it to look, even if it's multiple different systems it needs to look at in order to get that answer, you can use Celigo to connect it in that way. For example, the one that was pulling back that customer 360, I mean, that was going out to like 6 different systems to pull all that information, bring it all together, and then give you one really nice PDF output. And so that could be any 6 systems that it could connect.
We have another.
Wanted to bring up, let me see. Am I still sharing my screen, Charles?
Yep.
I just
We have a
wanted to,
couple more.
before we forget, I want to launch the last polling question if we can to help us out. It would be great. We need to get participation for, like we said, trying to get CPE certified to be able to offer CPE credit for these classes. So if you guys can help us fill this out, it'd be greatly appreciated.
And then we do have, I just launched it. We do have more questions. April said, can you elaborate more on how Celigo offering for NetSuite is different from the ScaleNorth AI Accelerator in regards to initial integration and readiness requirements and capabilities?
I could speak to that one. So April, the AI accelerator that we have is what sits on top of the Claude MCP, NetSuite MCP connector tools. So that doesn't really have anything to do with Celigo. You can basically, the only 2 things that are the systems that are at play there for that functionality to work is your NetSuite and your Claude being connected, right? Where Celigo comes in some of the use cases that we showed today, the value of having an orchestration tool is when you do have multiple applications, now you can connect all those in one safe place, kind of control what the data is flowing in between these different systems, what type of automations you're running on top of them, and steps and validation points and things like that. So that's what the difference is if you want to connect multiple endpoints and tools and applications, that's where you would need a tool like Celigo to help you do that easily.
And then another question, Chris Shipman, will either one of your companies show your clients how to connect either Celigo or NetSuite to an LLM, or do you, I'm assuming, do you have any documentation you can share with us so we can set it up?
Chris, we would definitely be happy to do a session with you to show you how to do it. No problem. We do it for our clients. And if you're interested, be happy to help out there.
And Roy made, I'm answering this one real quick, but Roy made I think he made a comment in the chat. If you want to look at that, we'll do this.
Let's see. For new prospects, I'm working on automatically pulling down a customer's tax exempt forms so we don't have to, in setting the NetSuite tax fields, W-9s are a bit tougher since they are protected. Okay.
I mean, that's totally doable.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on where you're pulling them down from, right? But I mean, as long as that system has an open API, I mean, for at least for Celigo, you connect directly to it, pull it down from wherever it's coming from, and then you can use Celigo to edit fields within NetSuite in a nice controlled flow. Because I mean, that's just standard field mapping, right? And maybe be the LLM in there as well, like, hey, recognize where it's coming from, pull it in, and update. Yeah, they are everywhere. That is the hard part. Getting them, keeping them up to date, and getting them all into a repository is the hard part with tax exempt forms. I think we all go through it.
Yep. All right, and it looks like polling questions, we got pretty good participation. It looks like most interest would be in customizing the native NetSuite report builder, followed by then maybe customizing native NetSuite CRM or Salesforce capabilities. Nobody's that interested in custom forms. Good. Advanced PDF, 14%. So that's super helpful because next class is going to be on that. So it seems like we'll be addressing customizing report builder next class. Thanks, Charles, for the polling. You could end that. And again, I mean, we're now to the point where basically, we're at Q&A. So we'd really like to open it up for those who are still hanging out. I know it's been a long session, but if you're still here and you have questions for either the Celigo team or ScaleNorth team about use cases, automation, just want to make a statement about what you've tried or give some feedback, we'd really like the collaboration here.
And you guys can either put it in the Q&A or just raise your hand and you can come on live too. Don't be shy. Usually people are a little bit shy. Any questions, guys? Everyone's AI expert now and can come teach the class the next webinar.
Yeah, there's a lot of content to cover. It's to Thomas's point, it's like seems like every couple of weeks there's a new person taking the lead or a new, application or plugin or tool that does something. So I think a lot of people are burnt out on AI too. Believe me, at some point I was like, I don't want to keep talking about AI, but you kind of have no choice. Like it's just keeps adopting and evolving and changing very fast.
Yep. So we got a couple questions. So Anonymous says, just starting to dabble with AI in NetSuite. Any recommendations for a first step for a controller type role? It's a good question.
I'll let Thomas answer that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard one. I mean, what do we mean by AI in NetSuite? Because I think AI NetSuite has the what is it, Oracle Next, or they do have AI. I think they've launched that within there. If we're talking specifically about that one, it's not a tool that I really leverage, but I think when you think about AI, and honestly, when you think about any finance transformation, digital transformation, right, it's had a lot of different terms over my 15-year career, but the idea really is the same. It's finding that repeatable process that happens over and over and over, right? The beauty of AI is now it can be unstructured data. Now it can be less logic, rules based, and it can have more interpretation in there. And that's where AI really shows its power, is that it can actually, I mean, I don't think it's truly thinking, but it can actually think through different scenarios and come back with better decisions when it's not 100% rule based. But I mean, in general, I think the obvious ones almost always are AR and AP as the first places to really look, because that's usually where you have a high volume of transactions and there's usually little pain points in there that you can fix. And I'd say the same thing as like Ronan started with as well, right? Start simple, right? If you're really just starting to dabble in it, start with something simple, take little pieces of it, but try to keep that bigger vision of like, what would a truly autonomous agentic end-to-end workflow look like? And by that, I just mean every process should have its happy path, right? Where hopefully above 50%, hopefully about 80% of transactions always follow that happy path. And then once you identify that, and once you automate the happy path, then you go look at those 20% exceptions that are all over the place and you start bringing them into the happy path, because now your team's going to have the time to be able to focus on that kind of stuff.
That's helpful, Thomas. Definitely.
So we had a couple questions. And Roy just had a comment. He said, first thing to do in AI is to learn how to prompt. Prompt engineering is so important.
Yeah.
Very true. I think everyone's shaking their head on the panel. And I know, Dean, we have a offer for demo as well. Do you want to go over that while we're doing the Q&A? Because I know people are going to start heading out.
Yeah, if just before people leave, and it's kind of relevant here, and I think it actually goes towards some of the questions here as well. So we have some additional resources here. Again, we'll send out this deck so you have it. But feel free to book some time with us. We have a exclusive offer going on right now, really because we want people to, people are just kind of sitting around not doing anything. We want to encourage action. We like partnership. We like collaboration. We want to understand what are your use cases. So for those who attended today, if you found any of this interesting and you want to explore more, you can book basically an AI enablement session with ScaleNorth and Celigo. We can go through your use cases, figure out how we can put some of that into motion and actually get some of these automations live for you. And to help sweeten the deal, just as like an exclusive offer to this group, you could get 20% off of your first year license term with Celigo. And ScaleNorth will also throw in 10 hours towards helping you in your AI automation use cases. So we want to partner together. We want to do that. And this is one way to kind of help with that for those who are ready to take action.
And Dean, if you can take that, because we can't click on that. So take that link and put it in the chat.
Oh, sure. Yeah, let me do that really quick.
That demo link is not available.
Okay.
So
you guys put it in the chat, Charles?
Yeah, put it in the chat.
I see. It's everybody.
They just can't click on their link.
Did that come through okay? Do you see a link?
Yep, there it is.
Okay.
So you guys can click on that, get a demo. And if you book by April 15th, you get that great deal from both companies. So a couple more questions. Amy, that was great in terms of understanding what is possible. I still feel pretty lost in terms of how to execute some of this. Would ScaleNorth be the place to get help with execution? We use Celigo already to connect Salesforce to NetSuite. And we have the MCP set up for Claude with NetSuite. Yeah, we can definitely help you with that, Amy. We can. I'll ping you on the side, and we can set up a time to talk and see how we can help. We have quite a few people that are certified on Celigo as well, so we can definitely help you with that.
Yeah.
John,
I was going to add to that, Charles, that yes, I think most people who have NetSuite do have Celigo usually, but if you don't, then obviously you're learning more about the tool and what's capable. But to Charles's point, we have tons of certified people who are, we're a preferred partner with Celigo. We do a lot of Salesforce, a lot of Shopify, e-commerce, a lot of just basically most integrations that you can think of. We've done them on Celigo. So we can definitely help. It'd be worth probably having a quick conversation to see if it would be a good fit, and we can definitely do that. And then to Chris's question is kind of in the same boat. Well, just wanting to learn about more use cases from clients. The reason why we're putting on this session is because we haven't seen the adoption. I think when Ronan did the survey, everybody's still in step one, step two. I think it's that trust factor. AI is hard to trust still. There's early adopters who are going to, get there faster, but we haven't seen a lot of clients truly rolling out or adopting this. And that's why we want to be there for you as part of that roadmap, enablement, and rollout journey. So that's where you could partner with ScaleNorth, Celigo. You guys can help provide the vision, the automation that would be helpful. We want it to be a hands-on experience, but when you do get stuck and you got day jobs and all that stuff, that's where you could leverage ScaleNorth and our experience of the tools to help work together to bring some of this stuff to life together. So that's kind of the goal and the vision. And
I want to add to that, especially with Amy, with
yep,
your comment is, yeah, I mean, if you already have Celigo and you have your LLM of choice, and maybe if you have the extra endpoint, like that is such a great first step, is just working with your team, getting the LLM enabled. It'll start unlocking so much stuff, and it really starts to snowball once you start working on some of these solutions. So that's definitely a great first step.
yep. And,
Uh,
and Charles, you got more questions here, or?
yeah, John. Hey, what's up, John? Can it link up to Salesforce for a booking report and go through the RevRec rules in NetSuite to provide a what if on booking targets?
So the answer is yes. It can. You can totally build something like that. So I mean, internally we do use NetSuite's ARM for revenue recognition. We are on the side using AI and Celigo to actually automate a lot of the RevRec like reviews, like your revenue checklist, checking and verifying the waterfall and all of that. It is not easy. Obviously, as we all know, revenue recognition can be very complex depending on what business you're in. But it is possible for sure.
Excellent. And then April, another question. Is your integration to Claude using their Teams or Pro version or Enterprise with an SLA?
So for Celigo, we're on the enterprise version, but we literally just upgraded to that. So I don't think we have any custom SLAs with them. In fact, I'm not 100% sure that our Claude rep is even a real person because they do not actually get on the phone with us. It might just be an AI answering our questions. Until you get to a
That's
certain number of users, they won't get on the phone with you.
that's funny. Um, and then Chris mentioned I'd be interested to hear about more interesting use cases clients have started, fully anonymous, of course.
Yeah, I tried to cover that one, and like I don't know that I've seen a lot of, like, again, most of our clients right now are in that stage one, stage two, and we want to work together holistically to try to push the adoption and get further in the AI journey so that people can start taking advantage of some of this automation and the tools that are available.
So it looks like that's all the questions we have. And it doesn't have to be about AI. I mean, obviously, if you guys have any questions about NetSuite, we always open it up as well. But yeah, let me know any questions you guys have.
Yeah, I'm happy to hang back a little longer. I know Thomas and the rest of the Celigo team, this has been a long call for you guys. So, I mean, I appreciate you hanging out and even answering some questions. But if you got to get going, I know Ronan had to get to another meeting. Thank you so much for your guys' participation and contribution here today. And yeah, this was a great event, great turnout, and really appreciate your support.
Yeah, can you guys
Well,
show in the chat, was this helpful, right? Thumbs up, hand clap, whatever it is. Was this helpful? I show some appreciation to the team. We always put these on. It's 100% free. We just want to give free knowledge to the ecosystem. So was this helpful, right? I think we'd love to hear that. And actually, sorry, I do have a poll for that. I almost forgot. So I'll put this up while we kind of finalize our Q&A here. It's launched a survey. If you can go through that, please, that'd be great. Gives us a lot of good information on what you guys want to see. Is this helpful? Is this not? What do you like? What do you dislike? What would you like to see the next time, etc. So if you can take 60 seconds and fill that out, that would really, really be helpful.
And Charles, I asked Claude, and the answer to question 8 is Dean, by the way. Just if you're wondering what ChatGPT thinks or AI thinks, there you go.
I think I think AI is definitely a dude then.
Uh, any other questions for those who are still hanging out? I get it. People have to start dropping off. It's been a long class, spending time with us on your Friday, maybe your lunch hour. Thank you so much. But we'll hang out just a few more minutes here to see if we could help answer any questions. And thank you everybody for who attended and showed some support here today. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you guys can just answer those questions for the survey, the last survey, this really helps us, like I said, help you to just have good information, good dialogue, understanding what what you guys want to see going forward. Like I said, we do this every month, once a month, usually middle of the month, so it's not so hard on month and close time period. Usually second or third week Friday of the month. So we will have a new topic for April. But I think that is it. We'll give it another minute or so. But thank you, Thomas and Joy and Ronan, obviously for your time and a lot of good stuff. I think a lot of people were pleasantly surprised on the use cases. Good. I think that's it. Give it any other questions? Going once, going twice, going three times. Well, appreciate it, guys. Have a great weekend. Thomas, once again, thank you. And Ronan, thank you guys so much. I know a lot of time was put into it. We love the partnership with Celigo. And have a great weekend. And for the record, Dean, I am winning 6-1 right now.
Yeah.
So,
Well, humans think that you're more handsome, Charles, but AI, so yeah, I'll take that.
just kidding. Just kidding.
I
All right, guys.
know. All
Have a
right.
great weekend. We'll see you guys next month. Hit us
Thanks,
up
everybody.
online, and the link to the demo is in there as well. So appreciate it, guys. We'll send you guys the recording for this. Have a great
See
weekend.
everybody.
God
Have
bless.
a good one. Have a good
Bye-bye.
weekend. Bye.